Well, Toronto is getting a big top-up of new federal money. The city will receive $143 million to help cover the cost of housing thousands of asylum seekers. This money comes from a new federal fund to help provinces, territories, and municipalities provide shelter for the growing number of refugees coming into Canada.
It means, critically, that more newcomers will have a safe and stable place to call home while they get settled in Canada.
Toronto says it is currently housing around 6,000 asylum seekers and refugees in its homeless shelters, making up more than half of its shelter population and bringing the system to full capacity. Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow joins me now. Mayor Chow, welcome back to the show.
Hello.
I'm not trying to downplay the significance of $143 million, but you were looking for $250 million, or at least the city was. So how does this money, which is below that number, how does that handle the shortfalls that you've outlined in your city?
Well, this investment is providing a lot of hope for thousands of refugees claimants right here in the city of Toronto. They are quite desperate because when they arrive to international airports, they don't know where to go, and some of our shelters are full. So with this investment, it really helped the city not only to pay the bills, but to provide more shelter support for those refugees claimants. Last year, the city of Toronto spent $200 million, and last summer, the Prime Minister provided $97 million as sort of a first installment, and this is now the second installment, so that we are completely made whole for 2023. But as you know, because the federal government fiscal year is different than the City of Toronto fiscal year, ours starts in January, theirs starts in April. This investment today, the $40 million, provides the first quarter. And given how they have completely made us whole last year with the IHAP program, we are confident that they will also do so in this year, this fiscal year 2024. So we are extremely grateful that the federal government continue to be a great partner with the City of Toronto. This amount also unlocked the provincial government, because the province said that we too will contribute if the federal government come to the table. And the fact that they did, it unlocks both levels of government's funding for the City of Toronto, which we desperately need.
Okay, so when I do the math and I look at what was a $250 million request from Toronto and $143 million delivered from the federal government, you're telling me that's not a shortfall, that's just a difference in budgeting cycles, and you think that gap will be made up once we get the budget from Chrystia Freeland sometime in this spring. Is that correct in the understanding there?
Exactly.
Okay, so your financial problem, that the budget chief had said if you don't get it, you're going to have to raise taxes by an additional 6% over what you propose in the budget. That is off the table now. You'll be able to proceed and manage based on the arrangements and the expectations of more money coming from Ottawa.
Exactly. So everything in terms of the tax increase is off the table. I just presented the budget yesterday. It's less than $1 a day increase for residents of Toronto if you're a homeowner. If you are a tenant, we have lowered the rate, the multi-residential rate, so that the landlord cannot go to the tribunal to use the property tax as an excuse to jack up the rent. So with this investment, it's a good news for the City of Toronto and the other residents, because then that big amount no longer would come from the property tax base. If you add that with the investment that the federal government did last year, which is $500 million of funding to provide for the city to build housing, build it faster and a lot more, over 50,000 units of housing. So, and quite a lot of them affordable. So we're very excited that on both housing and shelter, there's hope for those people that have been waiting for years to get into some form of affordable housing.
So how much of the problem does this money allow you to deal with in terms of the pressure the shelter system and the housing system has had from asylum seekers and from refugee claimants? We've heard from Francois Legault that they're just sort of at the breaking point in Quebec. I know it's a similar situation in Toronto. What does this money let you do that you couldn't do before?
Well, there's two parts to this money. We talked about the shelter piece. The other piece that's really good is the $19 or the $20 million of housing benefits, which is a rent subsidy. As you know, a lot of the refugees get a job, and they would take any job. And before they get their work permit to do so, they need a bit of help, a bit of rent supplement. And the $20 million is to provide people that have been homeless or living in shelters, whether they're refugees or single moms or seniors. We give them a bit of help and supplement their rent so they could find a place they can call home. They can cook for themselves, achieve independence, and be able to become established right here in Canada. That too is excellent news. We have so far created 3,000 homes for residents of Toronto. With this injection of money, it'll be another 2,000 people where they would be able to find a permanent home. They could finally afford the rent and be able to leave their shelter. As they leave their shelter, then we have 2,000 more spaces to bring in some of those refugees claimants coming to the Toronto airport.
Well, the challenge, of course, is that this is money to deal with the system and the population as it exists right now, but the refugee flows and the asylum seekers are continuing, right? Because we have global migration challenges and a lot of people are fleeing to safer countries like Canada. Minister Mark Miller said that even though the new funding is important, the government has to work on reforming the system to deal with the large flows of migration. And you also said that last year saw an influx that no one expected. So what's an acceptable number of asylum seekers coming to Canada, coming to Toronto, and what do you need to see from the federal government on that side of this challenge?
That's totally up to the immigration minister. He has the numbers. We don't have the entire picture across Canada. What I do know, though, Toronto, we used to be called a city of York, where we have 30,000 people way back when. 50,000 Irish refugees arrived to the shore of Toronto because the potato famine was on at the time. And the Irish refugees helped create Toronto. It helped build Toronto. It enriched their lives. Now, at that time, it was very difficult because many of them were sick. They were homeless. They have not a penny to their names, but look at the Irish community and look at how vibrant Toronto has become. So I prefer to see refugees or newcomers as that they help build this country, and they will continue to do so. It's just that when they first arrive, they need a bit of help, and the city of Toronto are there for them. And as of today, the federal government said that, yes, we too are going to continue our partnership with the city, and we're very grateful for that strong partnership with all three levels of government.
Okay, so just as a final point, you say this unlocks the provincial government. What's Doug Ford going to contribute to this? Do you have total clarity on that yet, or are you waiting on something from the Premier?
We struck a new deal with the provincial government. It's $200 million per year for 3 years, which we really welcome. That new deal also include uploading the big highway Gardner and DVP.
But is that the extent of it, or does this unlock further stuff, Mayor Chow? That's what I'm wondering. Is there more that this can trigger?
This trigger the shelter and housing money from the provincial government, the $200 million per year, which is great. We need it.
Okay. Olivia Chow, Mayor of Toronto, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.